Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is a companion video. What are companion videos? Well, I'm awfully glad that you asked. You see, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday, we take time to take live questions, but quite often we don't have time to get around to all the live questions that get sent in. But I want to make sure if you send in those questions, they get answered properly in a video, so I gather up those unused questions and we address them here on companion videos. Now, today is Monday. We're going to do today's leftover questions and Friday's leftover questions. So we got a few that we need to get through. So let's not waste any time and dive right into it. And the first question we're going to start getting caught up on comes to us from DC, who writes, I'm not going to lie, I was looking forward to Spider-Man being back in his own universe. You know, I thought so too. I did. My first choice, as I always said, was Sony and Disney make a deal. But if they don't, I've always said it's not the end of the world. I mean, the good side is that we get Spider-Man in his own universe again. He doesn't have to be Iron Spider anymore. We're not going to have yet another disgruntled person who knew Tony Stark as being the villain. MCU is going to be fine. I thought everything will be fine. But the first choice is to have them make a deal again. And lo and behold, here we are, at least for two films. One Spider-Man film, one Spider-Man in the MCU film. So at least there's that. That's probably going to be the last of it, but at least we have that for now. All right. Wolfric13 writes, I absolutely love the idea of a Madam Web on the big screen. My favorite video games and animated Spider-Man shows growing up were always the ones with her. See, that was interesting because when the news came out last week that Sony is looking at doing a Madam Web movie. Now remember, looking at doing a movie and developing a movie doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do it. We've seen lots of movies go into development that never see the light of day. So keep that in mind. But I was like a lot of people, I'm like, I've heard of Madam Web, but I really don't know anything about her. And as I started reading up on her and reading like people, Rob and I talked about this the other day, reading people who really do know the Madam Web character quite well, and this notion of this intricate web that connects all the multiverses and kind of gives the Spider-Men their power, kind of like the Speed Force does for Flash and Speedster characters. As I heard them talking about it, I started going, that could be fascinating. Now, I don't know the video games. I don't know the animated series. I don't really watch that stuff, so I don't know any of that stuff. But just from the conversation I started hearing, I was kind of getting turned on to the idea of about a Madam Web movie as well. Again, don't know if it's going to happen, but at least sounds intriguing to me. Raymond Verrata writes, thoughts on John Turturro's Big Lebowski spinoff? Well, I haven't seen it. It's called The Jesus Rolls. I believe that's the name of it, The Jesus Rolls. He actually filmed it years ago. And it's kind of been sitting on the shelf for a while. And there was, the first trailer came out for it, but it was in Italian. So I didn't really watch it. But I like the idea in concept. The Jesus was a really cool character in Big Lebowski. So, and I love John Turturro. So sure, I'm up for it. I mean, it's a weird idea, but weird ideas can be really good. So I know very little about it other than I think Marion Cotillard is in it. I think she's the one who's in it. Or is it Audrey? You know, is it Marion Cotillard? Hold on a second. The Jesus Rolls IMDb. Or is it the girl from Amelie? I'm forgetting now. No, it's the girl from Amelie. It's Audrey Tautou. I always mispronounce her name, but it's the girl from Amelie. As soon as I said Marion Cotillard, I'm like, wait a minute. No, it's not Marion Cotillard. Anyway, so she's in it as well. I'm excited about it, but I really don't know anything about it yet to kind of have a thought on it yet. So we'll wait and see a little while longer. All right, Luke Middleton writes, Spider-Man Too Close to Home should be the title. That's not a bad one either. Rafael Esposito writes, from Variety, Disney will retain its merchandising rights and will put up to roughly a quarter of the financing. Sounds like co-financing to me. So we talked about this ad nauseum and at great length on the weekend on the open mic show. So it's confusing because when the reports all came out that they made the deal, there was nothing about Disney putting up any money. Then Variety, and I believe it was Variety, and I believe the Hollywood Reporter said Disney will put up some of the financing. But putting up some of the financing, I know it sounds weird, but is very different from co-financing. We'll get into that in a second. Deadline, however, then put out an article, and in their article, they don't just say what Variety did of putting up some of the financing. They outright say co-financing, right? That's what Deadline said. So there's a little bit of contradiction going on. The best way I know how to describe it is, look, there's many, many, many movie deals where certain entities and bodies will put up money in exchange for something, but it's not a true co-financing deal. Because one of the reasons I've always said Sony needs to avoid a co-financing deal with Disney is because when it's a co-financing deal, like a legit true up co-financing deal, you are actually giving up some of the rights to it. When it's a true legit co-financing deal, like I said, lots of bodies put up lots of money for movies that aren't co-financers. But when you get into a legit co-financing deal, you are actually, some ownership comes into question. Because if you're one of the official co-financers, there's a question of ownership and you get some of those rights. I'm oversimplifying it, but you get the general gist. So then it comes out, Variety writes, oh, they're going to put up roughly a quarter of the financing. Okay, that doesn't sound like co-finance. That just sounds like they're going to put up some money. It sounds like something that they needed to do in order to get the 25% profits that they arranged. That sounds fine. But then Deadline says co-financing. What's going on? I mean, I don't know. It would be one of the stupidest things in the world for Sony to actually allow Disney to be an official co-financer. One of the ways I've explained it before is, imagine this. You're going to buy a car, okay? And your best friend says, you know what, I'm going to give you $1,000 to help you towards buying your car. And I'll tell you what, let me use your car on Tuesdays. I got to go do this job out of town on Tuesdays. I could use a car. So I'll tell you what, I'll put up $1,000 for you buying this car. Let me use the car on Tuesdays. All right. But that's not co-financing, right? There's a difference between that and you going to the dealership and your buddy co-signing for it with you. Now they're financially on the hook for the car as well. Therefore, there is some ownership rights in question here. So there's a difference between somebody giving you some money for something and somebody actually going on record on contract. I am officially a co-signer for this car. I am a co-financer for this movie. They're two different things. So having Variety say one thing and then having Deadline say another, put it all into big question. Like, that's something Sony cannot allow to happen. But if you listen to Deadline, that might be what they're doing, which would be the stupidest thing in the world for them to do. And maybe they are just that stupid. Maybe I've overestimated them and I thought they weren't that dumb, but maybe they are that dumb. So anyway, let me see if I can pull it, because I put up a graphic of this the other day. Let me just pull it up. So the day that all came up, hold on a second. Let me see if I can just find it here. The day that all came up, and there it is. 1 second. The day that all came up, I sent an email to somebody I know close to the situation. And I'll just tell you the exchange I had. So I said, hey, I was just wondering about the Spider-Man announcement. Did Sony, in fact, do a co-financing deal with Disney? Does this compromise Sony's control over the character? Just curious because it seems like a little bit of a reversal in direction. Cheers from me. Then they responded to me, and this, I have no idea what this means. It's not a co-finance deal in the traditional terms. Okay, what does that mean? I'm not sure. In this case, Sony has not compromised its legal rights with the Spider-Man or its adjacent characters. Hope all is well, blah, blah, blah. So I wrote and asked them, okay, look, there's some confusion here. We got Variety saying one thing. We got Deadline saying another. Like, what is it? This seems pretty dumb. And the answer I got was, it's not a co-finance deal in the traditional terms. In this case, Sony has not compromised its rights with the Spider-Man character or its adjacent characters. Hope. Okay, so what does that mean? I don't know. I don't know what that means. I really don't. Because the reason I always said Sony cannot allow co-finance deals, because then you're giving up some of the rights. And that is something Disney cannot do. They can't do it. Now, one of the things I said this weekend on Open Mic, and we're going to cut this short because I don't want to go into the whole 20-minute spiel again. But one of the things I said this weekend was, look, you can put anything you, as somebody who used to work in contract law, you can put anything you want into a contract. You know, Sony could put into the contract, okay, we'll make this deal, but on the fourth Saturday of every year, Bob Iger has to wear a New York Yankees baseball cap to work. I mean, as silly as that sounds, you can put that in a contract. You can put anything you want into a contract. And if the two parties agree and sign, then it's a deal. So is there a possibility here that they did enter into what normally would look like a co-financing deal, but they put in specific language saying and protecting Sony's rights to the character, that this co-financing deal in no way extends any rights or reclamation of ownership of the rights over the Spider-Man character and the adjacent characters and blah, 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 blah. Could they have put that into a contract? Yes, they could have put that into a contract. It's not normal, but again, you can put anything into a contract that you want. So where I'm at right now is I have no idea where this leaves things. I got Deadline, who's very reliable, saying one thing. I got Variety, who's very reliable, saying it another way. I've got sources at Sony telling me that it's not a traditional co-finance deal. I don't know what that means. We've protected our rights. Okay, then why call it a co-finance? Anyway, so I am just as confused about this right now as everybody. I still stand by that the one thing Sony cannot do is a traditional co-finance deal that would surrender some of their rights to the character to Disney. They want to let Disney pay for stuff? Fine. But you can't let them get any ownership. And if they have done that, then it's one of the dumbest things in the history of the movie business ever done. It is absolutely one of the dumbest, most terrible moves ever done. Now, I'm being told that's not what they did, but I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know if that's true. So who the hell knows? So I'm in a position where I don't know what's going on. I just don't know what's going on. It's very confusing right now. I'm sure we'll see how it pans out later. Anyway, next up, CMJ World writes, found out last week that I have an iPic theater almost an hour away from me. Definitely thinking about checking it out because of your praise for it. I'm telling you what, CMJ, I had never been to one either. I've still only been once, but there's an iPic theater in Pasadena. Ann and I went to go see that horrible movie, the Pet Sematary reboot. Just terrible. I thought it looked good. It was terrible. But it was one of the best movie-going experiences I ever had. That theater is awesome. And I mean, I would just encourage people to look it up online. It's one of the most comfortable. You really feel like you are being served. Like, hey, welcome. You're here to be pampered as a movie fan. And it was. I felt like I was pampered from the moment we walked in the theater to the moment we left. It was a great experience, and I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's a little, not super expensive, but it is a little bit more expensive than a traditional theater. But the service, the experience, to me is worth it. I'll tell you what, if it was closer to me than like a half hour, 35-minute drive away, because I got three AMC theaters that are literally a 10, 12-minute walk up the road from me. So there's that. But if that iPic was like half the distance closer, I'd go a hell of a lot more. I hope you have a good time, man. Lycon Zero writes, Aaron mentioned that theaters moved up midnight show times because of theater shooting. Is Joker airing at 4 p.m. for the same reason? No. You don't go from 7 p.m. to 4 p.m. because that has nothing to do with it. That has nothing to do. And by the way, Aaron was quoting an article, and I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, I'm sure that was part of the equation and the conversation at the time, but I don't know that I believe that. I think that is just somebody writing that into an article, and maybe there's some merit to it, maybe there is not. I don't necessarily agree. But that said, no, moving it to 4 p.m. 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. There's no difference there. So no, I don't see there being any connection there whatsoever. James Lockman writes, one of two. This is going to be a great few months. I got my tickets for Joker, and we still have Dr. Sleep, Zombieland 2, Jay and Silent Bob, Terminator, Midway, which looks really good, Ford v Ferrari, which looks Oscar-worthy, 21 Bridges, which looks insanely good, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Knives Out, and Star Wars to come. My Regal Unlimited will be put to great use. This is a great home stretch to the year. Like, for all the reasons you just listed. And there are some movies in theaters right now you should be checking out. I'm telling you what, go check out this Abominable. It's a nice little movie. There are a number of movies in theaters right now that are worth it too. And we are in for a great home stretch to this year. This is shaped up to be a really great looking year for movies in 2019. It looked a little bit questionable at one point, but it is looking really super strong at this point. And if for no other reason, I keep telling everybody, James, look, if you live anywhere near an AMC theater or a Regal, or a Cinemark for that matter, and you're a movie fan, you go to more than 2 or 3 movies a month, you absolutely must get A-List or Regal Unlimited. It is the best gift you can give yourself. It'll save you a lot of money. You get to take in all these movies, and it's for stretches like this, James, that really drives that point home for having A-List or having Unlimited, because it's great. It is great. And you're right. What a great stretch. It's Joker week. I'm super stoked. I know a lot of you guys are excited too. All right. Noah Shanahan Jewett writes, I got nothing to say. I'm just over the moon right now. There you go. I think you're expressing, Noah, what a lot of people were feeling too. So I'm glad you're excited about it as well. Angel Palma writes, when do you think we will hear any news on a new Deadpool film? That's a good question. Honestly, I would have suspected Number one, I suspected we would have heard something at CinemaCon in April, but we didn't, other than that there will be more Deadpool coming. Okay. So then we get Comic-Con, and I suspected, well, they'll probably say something at Comic-Con, and Comic-Con came and went, no mention. Then I thought, well, for sure they're going to say something at D23, and D23 came and went, and they said nothing. So I don't know. I'm starting to, whereas I used to suspect we would have heard things months ago, I'm starting to suspect that maybe we won't even hear anything till 2020. So we'll have to wait and see. I know I'm anxious to hear what they're planning. They might not have figured it out yet, by the way. Maybe my prayers will be answered and they're still maybe debating whether or not just to have Deadpool in his own separate universe and keep him rated R. That would be awesome. I doubt they're going to do that, but how awesome would that be? So maybe they still haven't figured it out, what they want to do. Or maybe they just don't think it's time to announce it yet, but we'll find out. We'll find out. Orville Nation writes, obviously George lost his legal rights, but I don't think he loses his right to express dislike when being asked to endorse very bad sequel trilogy. Well, first of all, the sequel trilogy has been pretty good. Let's just be clear about it. The Force Awakens was amazing. I like The Last Jedi, although it's very divisive. A lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people like it. A lot of people didn't. It is what it is. But here's the thing. Of course he hasn't lost his right to express his dislike. I don't think it's very classy. I mean, when somebody gives you $4 billion... Look, let me give you a great example. Okay, let me give you a great example. I got my start in this whole area by doing my website, what was my website, the movie blog. I had a website called themovieblog.com. And that's really where I got established, was doing the movie blog. And it became fairly popular and it was great. And at some point, somebody came along and offered to buy it. And they bought it and kept me on to run it. And also, as a part of the deal of buying it, they also put up extra financing for me to make my movie The Anniversary. It was a great deal for me. It was. So they paid me a bunch of money to buy the site, kept me on running it. And later on, I left the site, but much later on. But the point was, after I left the movie blog, they did some things that I thought were fairly questionable later on. And don't get me wrong, I'm not crapping on, I believe they still run it. I believe the site still exists and they still run it. But I was feeling at the time like, in my own head, in my own internal monologue, I had some criticisms. Did I have the right to say, man, what they're doing at the movie blog now, blah, blah, blah. Did I have the right to do that? Sure I did, if I wanted to. Sure, I had the right. But they bought that site from me. They gave me money. And while I still had the right to bitch and moan and complain if I wanted to, I just didn't think it was the classy thing to do. They paid me a lot of money to buy that site from me. So it behooved me not to do anything to damage that thing they bought from me. It just seems like the more classy thing to do. George got $4 billion for a franchise he wasn't going to make anything more out of anyway. A franchise he created with his own hands and nearly destroyed with the prequels. But he got over $4 billion. By the way, a lot of that money was stock in Disney. And that stock in Disney has gone up a lot since the purchase. So the overall value of what he sold for Star Wars for has actually gone up quite a bit. But at the time it was $4 billion with a B, billion dollars. And look, again, that doesn't take away his right if he wants to criticize something. He does. But it's a little bit, I think, unclassy. Of a guy I worship and I will forever burn incense to the altar of George Lucas. I will always, George Lucas forever and always, amen. He's my hero forever. But just because somebody's my hero doesn't mean I won't point out something I would criticize. They gave him $4 billion. For him to say, then come out and speak something that can be damaging to that thing they gave him $4 billion for, I don't think is necessarily classy. And whether you agree or disagree with his criticism is irrelevant. It's just not the classy thing to do. They gave him $4 billion. They gave him $4 billion. When I left AMC, I did not criticize AMC. Now, I will speak about their HR department. A bunch of demonic jackals, incompetent buffoons who work there. That's just my opinion. I'm just expressing my opinion about it. But as the company as a whole, nope. They were good to me. The whole bit. I never slammed them. Now, when news comes out, and I'll be fair about the news. If they do something good, I'll point it out. If they do something bad, I'll point that out too. But they gave him $4 billion. But again, it doesn't take away his right to do that. And, but I mean, it also doesn't take away my right from saying, for George, as my hero, I think that was kind of classless. I mean, you took $4 billion. You're pretty happy about it. So, I mean, I don't know. That's just my kind of thing on it. But it is what it is. Ryan Cleary writes, "Hey, John, my concern with Feige moving away from the MCU is his successor won't handle the Fantastic Four and X-Men as well as the MCU to date, and we've waited 4 years for it. Thoughts?" Well, I mean, there's a couple things to keep in mind. Number one, just because, understand this, all hail Feige and all hail the foot of Feige, but don't assume that just because what he's done so far has been great, that automatically means what he'll do next is great. I'm not saying it won't be. I'm just saying, hey, even Spielberg has made bad films. There you go, right? The second thing you're assuming is that nobody else in the world could possibly do it. That's not true. That's not true. Somebody else may come along, and as inconceivable as it may feel, somebody may come along and do an even better job than what Kevin Feige did. I mean, we as a fan base, we put on blinders. Like, we think if somebody did a good job at something, nobody else could have done that. That's not true. It's just that they're the one we saw do it, and they did great, and they did magnificent. So people always looked at me funny. You think somebody else could have played Tony Stark other than Robert Downey Jr.? Yes. Sorry to burst your fantasy bubble, but yes. I don't know who, and I'm not saying it would be easy, and I'm not saying there are many who could. But it's just that we as audience members, we have this real bad habit of saying what we have seen is all that there is. You know, we've seen Robert Downey Jr. do amazing. He was born to play Tony Stark. He was amazing at it. But then we create this false narrative in our heads that means he's the only one that could have done it. For all we know, there is another actor that maybe would have been twice as good, but we never saw them play the role. And for whatever reason, either they turned it down or they didn't get a chance to do it, whatever, but we'll never know. So I wouldn't worry about that thing with Feige. Number one, because if he leaves, I'm sure he'll have a big say, because remember, I think when he leaves, he'll be leaving to take over Alan Horn's job, which will be overseeing all of Disney movies. That includes MCU, Star Wars, Pixar, Disney film, Disney animation, the whole bit. And so he'll still be there, and I'm sure he's going to have a very large influence over who his successor is. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Number one, don't automatically assume because what he's done is great means everything he will do is great. But number two, don't just assume that because he's done it, that means nobody else can. And keep in mind that he'll have a say, most likely, in who his successor is. And I wouldn't be shocked if he isn't already grooming his successor to one degree or another. Probably somebody we don't even know. So I wouldn't worry about it, Ryan. Honestly, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think the MCU will be in good hands regardless. I really, really do. All right. Darth Scorn writes, "Is there a chance that Disney always wanted 25%, so they asked for 50 to get Sony to offer what they were actually after?" I mean, it's possible, but I doubt it. I think they wanted to get as much as they could. I think they wanted to try to use their weight and their leverage and their manipulation of the audience to try to force somebody's hand. I think really what they wanted was ownership, and I don't think they got it, but I mean, who knows at this point. TC Robert writes, "I work for AMC and The Shining was 4K DCP. Interesting." Because that came up last week about whether or not it was in 4K, because I didn't hear that part about 4K. That's interesting to know. I really wish I had the opportunity to see that. I think that would have been a lot of fun. All right. Next up here, ZMG Ruler writes, "Official Brandon Routh Casey, that's probably Kingdom Come Superman images out." Yes, and it looks great. And let's be clear here. It's not Kingdom Come. The image, that S looks like the Superman image, the Kingdom Come for sure. But let's just be clear that they have not said he's playing Kingdom Come Superman. I mean, it's got that look, and maybe they're going to borrow some things from that. Maybe. I'm just saying, let's not get ahead of ourselves and call it Kingdom Come Superman just yet, because we don't know what they're doing with the character. Could have nothing to do with Kingdom Come and just has his look. We don't know. So let's just be careful about that. All right, but it does look good, doesn't it? Anyway, Daniel Haygood writes, "This mess makes me want to take entertainment law while I'm in law school, because both sides need better deal makers. Holy crap, we are not ragdolls." I know. I don't understand. First of all, I don't understand how this deal didn't just get easily extended. They really pooched it. They really did. I blame Disney. I think this is all Disney's fault. Look, and I love Disney. Everybody knows I have a lot of love for Disney, but this is all their fault. But still, both sides should have figured out a way to make this deal happen before all this mess hit the fan. I mean, they really should have. So I think this has left a little bit of a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And we'll see how it all kind of resolves itself coming out, Daniel. Anyway, but do consider getting into entertainment law, because it's going to be a lucrative field. Epic Berserker writes, Feige, the holy savior of all and mighty, and all worship the foot of Feige, everybody. Epic Berserker also writes, top 5 all time. Number 5, Bohemian Rhapsody. Really? You liked it that much? Number 4, John Wick 3. Number 3, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Number 2, Empire Strikes Back. And number 1, Avatar. Well, we see who's into the genre films and who likes their genre films. I mean, I love all those films. Absolutely. I love all those films. I don't know that I'd have Bohemian Rhapsody. I really liked Bohemian Rhapsody, like a lot. I don't think I'd have it in my top 50, nor would I have like John Wick up there either. I mean, it's not The Godfather or anything like that, but super enjoyable movie. And it's always great to read people's lists that look different from your own and still be able to go, yep, love that movie. Yep, love that. Maybe not on my list, but love that movie, love that movie, love that movie. Well done, Epic. All right. Joser Miaz writes, Spider-Man Tom Holland continue in Spider-Verse. I don't know what you're asking. I mean, yes, he is, but we knew that. I'm not quite sure what it is you're asking. Sorry about that, dude. Jeremy Shibasu writes, hey, John, love the show. Thank you so much. One of my favorite films ever is Kingsman. I thought it was one of the best movies of 2015, but the sequel was bonkers with no substance. How/why do you think it failed? Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by failed. I mean, it still made money. I think it made a little bit less than the original Kingsman. I'm with you. I did not like the sequel. And I love the first movie. It was one of my most pleasant surprise movies ever. Like, I went in with not much expectations for it, and I was overwhelmed by how good I thought that movie was. Like, absolutely overwhelmed. I thought it was just so brilliant and wonderful, and I dug it a lot. But the second, it's like the first, here's how I kind of think of it. And this is just my opinion. But like the first movie was this action, super agent spy movie with some real ridiculous, with a little bit of real ridiculous over the topness to it thrown in there, right? To great effect. The heads exploding and things like that. But then we got into Kingsman 2, and you know what Kingsman 2 was? Instead of an homage to the Bond films with some crazy over the top stuff, Kingsman 2 was Spaceballs of James Bond. It went totally stupid. It's like Matthew Vaughn, who I adore, but he thought, you know what made the first one good? The stupid, the bonker stuff. No, the bonker stuff was great seasoning for a great movie. It wasn't the core of the movie. And then they just went completely ridiculous with it. And that's not what made the first one good. And just as an example of how stupid and bad that movie was, the Elton John stuff was so when Elton John first appeared in, I'm like, okay, that's a cute cameo. Well done. But by the time you get to the Elton John as a kung fu master beating up, I'm like, come on, seriously. And it totally missed the point of what made their first film so good. So again, I hesitate to call it a failure because it did make some money, but to me, it was a very sorry letdown from the first one. And from the trailers, it looks like this new Kingsman movie understood that and has kind of gone the other direction. Like gone a little bit more. Let's get back to the action spy base and a little less of the bonkers stupidness to it. So it feels like they're getting back to what made the first one so great. We'll see. I mean, there's also a danger of going too far that way and not having enough fun in it. So it's a delicate balance you got to find. So I'm glad it looks like they're going more in that direction. I just hope they don't go too far in that direction and forget to sprinkle in a little bit of wacky fun at the same time. So we'll see how they do. Anyway, Javier Belmer writes, one of two. I'm kind of exhausted with all the fan bases online. With every franchise, it's either everyone ranting about something they dislike or celebrating because they think they're the cause of some change/stick it to the man fix. So self-entitled, just got to enjoy things. Well, look, I don't believe in you just got to enjoy things. I'm not a believer in that. I'm a believer that if you're a part of a fan base, you have a right to be critical. Look, I think the movie fandom has some catching up to do with sports fandom. See, sports fandom is, generally speaking, more advanced than film fandom. Because generally speaking, there are exceptions. But like, film fandom knows if I love the Yankees and you hate the Yankees, we can but it doesn't literally make us enemies. We can yell and scream at each other, but it's mostly done in fun. Like, as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, some of my favorite stuff was John with Montreal Canadiens fans. You know, it was just fun, but I didn't hate the person or whatever. Also, one of the things that sports fans get a lot more that movie fans don't is that, you know who's the most critical thing of sports teams? The hardest of hardcore sports fans of that team. Like, when a team makes a bad trade, they'll say, look, I love this team with all my heart and soul, but I think this was a stupid trade. But I'm still there every day. I'm going to be there every week, every game. I'm going to be there cheering them on. But I'm also going to criticize this trade. I think this was a stupid trade. I don't know what the hell they're thinking. We needed a left winger, not a new defenseman. We needed to shore up, this and that and other thing. Our second line penalty kill is weak and is a joke and blah, 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 blah. But I'm still wearing the jersey. I'm going to be there at the next game cheering on my team. And that's something that movie fandom, especially movie fan bases, have not gotten a hold of. Like, fan bases today are so far behind sports fan bases in the sense that, like, now it's like, I don't like what they did with that one movie. I'm going to boycott this franchise now because I didn't like what they did in that movie. Like, it's like, holy shit, you don't know what fandom is. It's like, check out more. I mean, it's weird to say this, but sports fandom has got a much better hold on it. We will criticize the things we need criticizing about our favorite teams. But regardless of whether that team did something smart or stupid or whatever the last game, I'm there at the next game with the jersey on cheering for the team. I'm not calling for a boycott of the Toronto Maple Leafs just because they made some stupid bad trade. I'm not calling for a boycott of the Toronto Maple Leafs because, oh man, they stunk that thing out last night. I'm not calling for a boycott because they got this goaltender, they pulled the right goaltender and put in the wrong goaltender. No, but we as fans, as sports fans, we know how to criticize our own favorite team. We know how to complain about our own favorite team. We know how to point out the things we don't like about our own favorite team. But when game day comes, we still put on the jersey and we cheer for the success of that team. That doesn't happen in movie fandom, at least not right now. Right now is, I don't like what they did with that. I'm never going to another one of those again. And I'm going to make 55 videos about why this franchise sucks now. And I'm not going to cheer for it. And I hope that it fails. Whatever. You're about 50 years behind sports fandom. And again, there are some really bad examples of sports fandom. Don't get me wrong. There definitely is. But I'm saying in general, you listen to sports talk radio and that's the opposite problem with some fan bases, right? Some fan bases are the opposite problem, which is, la, 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 my favorite franchise is perfect. Don't say anything bad about it. La, 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 la. And they plug their ears, cover their eyes, plug their ears, cover their mouths. Say no evil, hear no evil, see no evil. Don't say anything bad about my favorite movies. If you say anything bad about my favorite movies, you're a hater, blah, blah. Nah, sports fans are more advanced. Sports fans are like, oh, I love my team. My team's the best. But yeah, we've got a crappy coach. And yeah, we really, screwed the pooch the last few years. And yes, we made a bonehead trade last week. And like, sports fans know how to embrace and accept the shortcomings of their favorite team and love them anyway. Sports fans know how to criticize the things they don't like about their team, but the next game, they're putting on the jersey and cheering for their team. Win or lose. Movie fandom is a bunch of, look, I'm part of the problem. You're part of the problem. I'm part of the problem. This is just part of what it is of being a movie fan. Like, quite often, movie fandom bases act like entitled little children. It's like, I don't like that this actor said something I don't like. I want this movie franchise to fail now. Wah! I mean, that's what we do. It's like, you're not a fan. You're not a fan. I mean, that's why I will bleed Star Wars. I love Star Wars, but I will criticize the things of Star Wars that I don't like. I don't like the Clone Wars. Oh, sorry, I don't. I don't like the prequels. But you're a Star Wars fan. I know, but I know how to be a fan of something, acknowledge its weaknesses, at least what I see as its weaknesses. You may not see it as a weakness, and that's fair. But I know how to acknowledge the weaknesses of something that I see as weaknesses, admit the weaknesses of something that I see as weaknesses, and still love it anyway. Star Wars is my favorite franchise. And it's my favorite franchise not because I think it's perfect, but I love it despite its flaws. And I love it, and I'll always cheer for it. And I always want it to succeed. And even if I watch a season of Rebels and I didn't think that was a good season, I'm going to be there for the next season of Rebels and hope that the next one's better. And, you know, I didn't think The Last Jedi was the best Star Wars movie. I liked it, but it's my least favorite of all the new Star Wars films. Certainly better than any of the prequels, in my opinion, but the least favorite of that. But I'm going to be there for episode 9, cheering it on, hoping that it's the most amazing thing ever. And if it's not the most amazing thing ever, I'll say it's not the most amazing thing ever. But I'll still be cheering for it, and I'll still be hoping for it to succeed. But I just really feel, Javier, I feel your pain. And I think part of solving it is understanding that we're all guilty of this sometimes. Like, I know some people like to point out, oh, you know, these 20 blogs and these 10 YouTube channels and these 10 podcasts, they're the problem. No. I think the reality is all of us as film fans have to acknowledge that to some degree or another, we're all part of that problem. We are. And I think we as film fans need to acknowledge that and then start to fix it and start to become a little bit more like sports fans in some ways, at least in the ways that we are not, don't say anything bad about my team, and we're not, I don't like what my movie franchise did, therefore now I hate it and I want it to fail. We got to become a little bit more like sports fan bases in that way, that are a little bit more even keel and understand how to love a team, acknowledge its weaknesses, criticize its weaknesses, but still be a fan. You know? And I just think that's something that we're seeing really, again, it's a very the film fandom has become a very toxic place where like every other article, whatever, is I hate this franchise and why this franchise sucks. And everything's about hate because hate gets a lot of clicks, but we've gone into that before. I just think we all, and me included, you included, everybody included, who count ourselves as film fans, I think there are a lot of lessons we still need to learn about becoming a more healthy fan base. And I'm not excluding myself from that. I think I'm part of that. And I got to figure that out too. And it's a learning process. And I think we'll get there. Sports fandom got there. I think we'll get there as film fan. I think you, me, all of us will get there at some point. Anyway. Okay. Sunny Claire writes, Thor, Love and Thunder. No, we need Rob. Fun and Wonder. We need a movie. That's what the MCU should do. I should call Bob Iger. Say, Bob, we need a Rob Master of Fun and Wonder movie. Guaranteed $700 million at the box office, Bob. Guaranteed $700 million. It'd be there. All right. Hollywood Love writes, he swapped the J's in his name. JJ Retcon, instead of Retcon. Retcon Abrams, because we talked about that on the show this morning. You know, JJ Abrams has come out and said, for those of you who missed the John Campea Show earlier, came out and said he's not looking to retcon anything. He doesn't think there's anything he needs to fix from episode 8. He says he's going to come in. He says, yes, they did some things in episode 8 that he wouldn't have done, just like he did some things that Rian Johnson would have done differently in episode 7. But JJ's attitude is, I'm not looking to fix anything or retcon anything, and I'm going to honor, even though I would do things differently, I'm going to honor what came before me in episode 8 and move on from there. But then again, as I pointed out this morning, this is the same J.J. Abrams who insisted to everybody that Benedict Cumberbatch was not playing Khan in that Star Trek Into Darkness movie. Is Benedict Cumberbatch playing Khan? No, he's not playing Khan. And of course, he was playing Khan, and we all knew it. So let's just keep that in mind about J.J. All right. Next up, Darth Sidious writes, hey, Chris. Unfortunately, she's not here right now. I was wondering if you've ever heard of a cartoon called Galactic Football. And you know what, Darth? Here's the thing. I think you've written that in about 6 or 7 times now. I would recommend sending her a tweet. If you really want to know if she's seen it, I would recommend at this point maybe sending her a tweet. Either make sure you get your question in earlier so we get it on while she's still here, but I would recommend sending it into her tweet to her, and maybe you'll get a response for her on that. That's probably the best way to go at this point, Sidious. Because I just want to make sure you get it answered, because you clearly want an answer to that question, and I want to make sure you get it answered. So I would recommend tweeting it to her and seeing if you can get a response from her there. All right, Matt Thornton writes, prediction for the MCU Spider-Man 3. Scorpion is created to unmask Spider-Man. Maybe, maybe no. It seems like they already have covered that ground just with the post-credit scene in the last Spider-Man. So I don't know. I mean, it's not, here's the thing, it's not the craziest idea in the world. It's certainly not the craziest thing I've heard. So it's a possibility. I just feel like there's not really a point to that because of the way the last one ended. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. We'll wait and see. But let's file that away and keep that one on record, because you never know. You never know. All right, Craze7 writes, John, if Joker is a big hit, the next DC villain movie should be Lex Luthor, and Robert Downey Jr. should play him. I don't see Robert Downey Jr. as a Lex Luthor type at all, to be honest with you. I don't see that at all. And I'll be honest with you, too. I don't really see a Lex Luthor standalone movie as an interesting movie. Lex Luthor is a fascinating character as a villain in another film. I don't think he's a Joker where it's like this character in and of itself has so many layers and is so fascinating. You can just do an entire movie on him. I don't know if there's a lot to say there about Lex Luthor in his own standalone movie. I think he's an incredible foil as a villain in a grander movie. But I mean, I don't know. I don't see it. But for me personally, Cray7, if you were, I definitely wouldn't see Robert Downey Jr. in that. That doesn't seem like a good fit to me. But you know me, I don't care about what actor you put. Just put in a good actor, and Robert Downey Jr. is a good actor. So if they announced him being Lex Luthor, I go, fine, yeah, let's give it a shot. But if I'm the casting person, I don't do it because I don't see the fit. I don't see the fit. He's a great actor, but I don't see the fit there. But if they announced it, I'd be in for it. So who knows? We'll see. All right, Darth Sidious writes, what if Yoda is referring to Ezra when he says there's another one when he's talking to Obi-Wan in episode 5? Well, he wasn't. That would be a complete retcon. There was no thought ever of an Ezra Bridger when George Lucas was making Empire Strikes Back. There was no thought of that. Didn't exist. That thought and character never existed. So that was clearly not the original intention. That's not what the line meant. You could retcon things and pretend like he did, but clearly that character was never thought up when that movie was made. So what was clear is that line was a setup to the Leia being the sister in Empire Strikes or in Return of the Jedi. That's what the line was about. And you'd have to redefine history in a way that it was never intended to kind of force that new meaning. So no, it was very clear. The intention of that line when they made the movie was Leia. Then it was fulfilled in Return of the Jedi that it's Leia. So yeah, that's the way it was intended. That's the way it is. Anyway, Eric Watson writes, Jason Bateman might direct the new Clue with Ryan Reynolds. Thoughts on a Clue reboot? I'm looking forward to it. Love the Ozarks. Well, actually, we talked about that last week. That was one of our big topics last week, and we discussed that ad nauseum. But just the Coles notes to it, I like the idea of it, especially with Ryan Reynolds and the guys who wrote Deadpool for him writing it. Jason just won an Emmy Award for directing for the Ozarks. I'm not a big fan of the Ozarks myself, but I love Jason Bateman. And, I'm a fan of the stuff that he has directed and his work as a director. And there was that one he did about the spelling bee, which Bad Words, I think is what it was called. That was really good. And he directed that. And to see him on screen again with Ryan Reynolds, because remember, they made that comedy, that body swap comedy, and the Change Up, I think it was called. And I didn't love that movie, although I did enjoy it. But I love their chemistry together, so I'm all for it. All right, next up, Paul Nolan writes, saw Ready or Not today. I loved it. Five ads, no trailers. I'm surprised Ready or Not's still in theaters, but man, I enjoyed that movie. That's a fun little movie, man. Low budget, simple little horror, very basic, but done with great execution, great timing, great performances. Shockingly, it's not Margot Robbie that everybody thought it was. I really enjoyed that. And no trailers. Oh, man, that must be nice. Valhalla Erickson writes, now that Iron Man Jr. is back in the MCU, I would like to see the MCU continue his adventures well into his adult years. I don't think that's what you're going to see. I really do think, now I don't know this, no insider information here, although Variety wrote something that seems to suggest this, so did Forbes, that these two films are going to be used to segue Spider-Man out. That seems to make the most sense. I think there's a reason why they made a deal for one more Spider-Man movie and then for Spider-Man to appear in another MCU movie rather than a new 5-film deal. I think there's a reason it was just 2. Now, it is possible, as I said before, that the reason they made it just 2 is so they could buy themselves time to come up with an extended deal. But from what I'm hearing, and I can't attest to this as fact, I'm just saying this is what makes sense to me. I think this is going to be it. I think this is going to be it for for Spider-Man being in the MCU. I think these are going to be the last 2 films. And you know what? I'm all for it. Because it's certainly better than just that abrupt, out of nowhere ending that Spider-Man's now out of the MCU. It's like, what? What? At least having 2 more films to ease it out, I think, is pretty good. So we'll see how that goes. Aram writes, what's your next most anticipated UFC fight? Well, I'm looking forward to a lot of them. But the one I'm really looking forward to a hell of a lot, which is not set up yet, but it will be, would be John Jones versus Johnny Walker. That to me would be a hell of a fight. I think this Brazilian kid, Johnny Walker, I believe he's Brazilian. He is tall, lanky, unorthodox, super creative fighting style, devastatingly powerful. I love watching this kid fight. And the funny thing is he did this big thing where his last fight, for those of you who don't know this Johnny Walker kid, he won his last fight, total convincing fashion, and did this big thing where he put out his arms and fell backwards flat onto the mat like he was doing a back fall into a pool, like a trust fall. And it was something like that. And he popped his shoulder when he did it. And he had to go to the hospital after. And he's been out of commission since. So he's got another fight coming up here in a couple of weeks. But I think if he wins that fight in devastating fashion, I think you could see a John Bones Jones versus Johnny Walker fight. And I think that would be a hell of an entertaining fight. All right. Jake Iyer writes, how does the lack of people going to Disney's Galaxy Edge affect the future of Star Wars franchises? I would hate to see Rian Johnson or Benioff and Weiss lose their trilogies. It doesn't at all. It has nothing to do with anything. And by the way, all I can say is I've gone now to Galaxy's Edge 4 or 5 times. I mean, Ann and I have seasons passes, so we try to make sure we get value out of it by going as often as possible. And all I can say is every time I'm there, it's packed. And I've taken pictures being there. It's always packed. That being said, they have been saying that the attendance numbers for Disneyland overall have gone down a little bit. I think they said 2% it's gone down, which 2% doesn't sound like a big number. 2% is significant. Make no mistake about it. I personally attribute that to the fact that by opening Star Wars Land, they raised their prices. It is ridiculously expensive to go to Disneyland. Like stupid expensive to go to Disneyland. I'll use a different word. It's obscene how much it costs to go to Disneyland. And by opening up the Star Wars Land, they only upped it. They upped the prices even more. And it's hard to go. And when you consider that most people in the world, they want to go to Disneyland, they got to fly in from somewhere, get a hotel for a couple of days, and go adding to it's stupid expensive just for me to drive an hour to Anaheim and go. So I personally think so, but no, the theme park and Disneyland thing, it has nothing to do with anything. It's just no. Shillin 1506. And by the way, I don't think, just for the record, I don't think Rian Johnson is getting his trilogy. I don't think he is. I think that trilogy is done. I don't think it's going to happen. But John, just recently, I know what Rian Johnson recently said, but I think that's just all PR stuff right now. I think that's just all denial until episode 9 comes out. Because they don't want the story to be about how Rian Johnson's trilogy is canceled. They want people talking about episode 9. I think, now, again, I'm not claiming any insider information here that Rian Johnson's trilogy is gone and dead. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying I think it is. I think it's dead. I really do. I think it's dead. The Benioff and Weiss thing is happening for sure, but the Rian Johnson thing, I don't think it's going to happen at all, to be honest with you. But it has nothing to do with Disneyland. Shillin 516 writes, John, I just read the update deadline article, and it said that Disney Marvel will co-finance 25% of the third film. I thought Sony wanted to avoid this. Again, we talked about that a little bit earlier. The deadline article said that. Variety article said something different. And then I got that one email. So I don't know. I mean, look. It's possible it's not a co-finance deal. It could be just a financing agreement where they'd put up 1,000 or 25%, roughly 25% as Variety says, in order to get that 25% of the profits. It could be a legit co-financing deal where they are partners and co-financing partners on it, which gives Disney some ownership back over Spider-Man. Or it could be as the email wrote to me, and I still have no idea what it means, a non-traditional co-financing agreement where all of Sony's rights as regards to Spider-Man and his characters are protected for Sony. What's the truth of it? I don't know. At this point, I don't know. I'm just saying it'll be the dumbest thing in the world. Sony is a bunch of idiots if they gave up any of the rights to Spider-Man. If they didn't give up the rights to Spider-Man, then it doesn't matter if you call it a co-financing deal, a partial arbitrary financial agreement, if it's just them, Disney kicking in money for beer. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's perfectly fine as long as Sony protected their rights to Spider-Man. But if they didn't, they're a pack of idiots. They're a giant pack of idiots if they didn't protect their rights to Spider-Man. If they did, then everything's fine. You can call it co-financing deal. You can say they're just kicking in for the, which we talked about the differences between those earlier in the show. You can call it that. You can call it co-finance. You can call it whatever you want. Doesn't matter. As long as Sony protects their rights to Spider-Man, then it's all good. But if they didn't, then there's problems. Then there's big problems for Sony. Then they're just being governed by a pack of idiots if that happens. So we'll have to wait and see. Hideaway Killer writes, and this is the final question, then we're all caught up. Hideaway Killer writes, Doom Annihilation just came out. I was saying it's a good movie unlike the first and saying I like them spending money to make movies as advertisements. Well, here's the thing. Doom Annihilation, I had some people message me on Instagram afterwards, after the show, saying, I think the Doom he was talking about was Doom Annihilation. And here's the thing. If they're spending money on Doom Annihilation as marketing for the Doom video game things, they're doing a really bad job because I didn't even know it existed. and I'm in the movie world in a way. I'm in the movie world. And if they made that movie as a way to promote the Doom franchise, and that was a big waste of money because I'm in the movie world and I had no idea it was coming. It was a straight to home video. It looks terrible to me. I haven't seen it, so I don't know if it is terrible. Maybe it's great. I don't know. But it was a big waste of marketing money if that's what the point of it was, because I didn't even know it was there. So, not that I'm the most plugged in guy and keep my fingers on the spider web threads all the time to know everything that's going on at all times. But I mean, I'm just an average guy. And if I didn't know it even existed, how effective was that marketing? I think that's a fair question at this point, don't you? Anyway, thanks for sending that in, Hideaway Killer. And thank you for the clarification, my brother. All right, guys, that will do it for this installment of the companion videos. We are now all caught up on all the questions that got sent in. Special thank you to all you guys who did send in those questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported the channel while you were doing it. And we all here at the John Campea YouTube channel, thank you. Me, Aaron, Chris, Rob, Ray, Jonathan, we all thank you for that very much. And thanks for being a part of the film fan community, guys. All right, guys, that will do it for me for now. Don't forget, the John Campea Show returns again tomorrow. Make sure you come back and join me and Robert Meyer Burnett as we have a whole ton of stuff we're going to talk about. I'm also going to talk a little bit about Stranger Things in the new season. Not just that season 4 has been confirmed, but I got a little bit extra for you on that I'll tell you about on tomorrow's show. So make sure you're there to join us for that. That'll do it for me for now, guys. Thanks so much for being here. My name is John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye.